Let's talk about the really high work in journey space. The really high work in journey space is not simply becoming aware of things. It's transmuting your DNA. You can forget about all this 4D, 5D business that people are talking about. It's the wrong axis. It's the wrong nomenclature. We never have lived in a 3D universe in the first place. So people who go around talking about the transition from 3D to 4D are already wrong and ignorant. This is the sign of the New Age movement. This realm has always been at least a 7-dimensional realm. It is now becoming a 9-dimensional realm. What are the dimensions? First dimension is cosmic intent. This is measurable. All dimensions are measurable. It may not be measurable by human intellect standards, but it is understandable that there can be more or less cosmic intent. Cosmic intent then flows into the second dimension, which is that of mind. Mind then expresses through the elaboration of vibration, motion, wave. Vibration establishes two things simultaneously. It establishes cycle, which is time, and it establishes space because of displacement, because of movement. So this is what gives the 7 dimensions. The space, of course, holding 3 dimensions, as we understand it. The time being the 4th. The vibration, the 5th. The mind, the 6th. The source intent, the 7th. But actually, the true order is the other way around. Source intent, cosmic mind, or mind of creator, you can say. Vibration, motion, establishes periodicity, pattern, which is time, and displacement, which is space. Space then experienced in the 3-dimensional planes that we understand. The height, the width, the depth, etc. These kinds of things. The 8th dimension is the dimension that is known as power. This is not power that we think about, electricity, magnetism, gravity, nuclear power. This is not what we're talking about. Power is the capacity for that which enters into manifestation to be able to sustain its manifestation. This is power. Now, there are things about power that are important to keep in mind. Once something comes into manifestation, comes into existence, it has the right to exist, no matter how it came. It may have come by virtue of the darkest, most vile, as Master Dr. King would say, source. But once it exists, it has the right to exist. People wonder why I'm not at the Ethereal Society consistently. It is because there are understandings that have been delivered here that are not to be acknowledged at this time in the teachings of the Ethereal Society. And that has to do with what was the admonition by the Lord Aetherius through His Eminence Sir George King, that there would be no new teachings until there was the return of the next master embodied. And so they are not permitted at the Ethereal Society to acknowledge additional teachings and streams of awareness beyond what have been the formal teachings and channelings of Master George King. This is why you have to be careful. As much as we love Brian and Brian loves us, he is under a limitation. You can sort of think of it as like your brother, your best friend works for the CIA, okay? There are just certain things you don't talk about. So you have to understand it that way. Mm-hmm. The time will come when the gates will be open for more transmissions to be acknowledged. This is why you have to prepare yourself. This is why you have to know that you're fully committed to accuracy. You cannot have truth without accuracy. You can have general impressions. You can have gestalts, a general sense of something. You may even feel 100% convinced that you must tone and attune so that there is accuracy in the transmissions. You record these transmissions orally or written, and then time will come when they will be allowed. Mother Luisa Picaretta, about 90 years ago, in Italy, was receiving the equivalent of 36 books of direct transmission information from Mother Mary. These books all called for the destruction and the dissolution of the Catholic Church from its rotting from within. She would be taken into trance and she would transcribe these books. This began what is called the Order of Divine Will. Those books were confiscated by the Vatican somewhere around the 1930s or so. And for something like 30 years or so, they were, or longer, they were kept locked up. They could not be destroyed because they were verified as being direct divine transmissions. But they were not in harmony with the teachings of the church and the practices of the church. Because it was already well known at that time, the vile sins within the church, the corruption. This has always been the case. So they could not destroy the transmissions, they could only delay them before they would be ordered through other means to release them. So now you will see, if you look up Order of Divine Will online, you will see these transmissions. In some of these orders, I am noted in prophecies. And so I was summoned to Italy in 2004 to receive the invisible stigmata from Padre Pio at his tomb. And I was given the tears of the Crying Madonna statue, the shrine of the Crying Madonna, and I, for several years, was the custodian of that bottle of tears until they got left. I could not get them out of China. They got misplaced. But the purpose of this is understanding that when you begin to become a channel, to become the most accurate channel, you must transmute. You must transmute yourself. It's not enough to have discipline. It's not enough to have heart dedication. You must transmute. You've seen these trucks sometimes around American streets. These guys who take a pickup truck, and then they put all of these lifts on it, these big heavy-duty shocks. They raise the truck up off the ground, and then they put these extra big tires and everything. They're taking something that is basic, standard, and then they're altering it to do something different. Put a stronger engine in it, and you put big old tires, and you lift it way up off the ground, and then they take it off-road and play with it. This is what you have to do with your body. This is what you have to do with your biomatrix. And you have to do it all the way down to your genetic level, your morphogenetic biomatrix. This is what took Master King those years. It wasn't just mastering yoga. At the time, in fact, he was already considered a yoga master. What he had to do was go beyond that. Go beyond the level of understanding of what the practice of yoga or spiritual practice in general really is. He had to go to the level of understanding that to be the voice of interplanetary parliament, to be the embodiment of cosmic intelligence, and to be able to function and operate in this plane, in a physical vessel, you must change the physical vessel. It is not about health and fitness. It is about the morphogenetic and the quantum biomatrix, all the way down to that level. So the emergence of power as the eighth dimension. Please follow me along. I'm speaking in multiple directions. This is part of what holds the Bindu. When you give multiple perspective, be able to track from many different directions, different perspectives simultaneously. People will get lost. They think you're talking all over the place. When you are centered, you will realize. If you walked into the middle of an argument and there were 10 people in the room and they were shouting and fighting and doing things all over the place, as a Bindu, your responsibility is to see everyone's point of view, and to be able to explain it, to be able to reconcile. You cannot do that if you're just linear-minded. You cannot do that if you are just reductionistic. If you are thinking just there's only one answer here. Somebody's right and all the rest of them are wrong. You cannot do that. But in order to be able to have that capacity, you have to understand power. The sustainment of the Bindu consciousness is an expression of high, high power. Otherwise, it is a momentary realization, which then dissipates. So power is the capacity to bring something into manifestation, into flow, into form, into creation, and for it to be sustained. That is what power is. Now these beings from the inversional realms also have had access to power to bring things into this realm that can be sustainable, such as hatred. such as fear. So when something has that existence, and you understand the nature of its power, or the power that brought it into existence, then you also have to understand the nature and the extent of the cosmic, divine, infinite, unconditional, compassionate love that is necessary to address it. The nature of that as power, not simply a momentary blast of some intention, but what that is as true power. The ninth dimension is the dimension of realization. Realization is a metric. There is less realization, there is more realization. There is continued expansion of realization, there is contraction of realization. Realization as the ninth dimension is that which is the bridge from that which is in manifest mode of existence onto its connectivity to Creator and to Source. Realization, therefore, as realization increases, the field becomes more supportive of continued expansion of realization. And the greatest manifest expansion of realization is the field of awakening to cosmic source self-realization. This at this time, in this field, in this realm, is the ninth tier power dimension, which is realization, greater than the eighth dimension of power. It is the ninth, it is that which is becoming stabilized. The power of realization requires, at the ninth dimension, requires the power of stabilization, manifest continuity, power at the eighth dimension requires the seven dimensions below it in order that that which holds form have sustainability as a form. Now, for you to experience this more and more, your own biomatrix has to evolve. Part of that evolution is your mind itself, your thoughts, your language. Part of that is your physical practices. Part of that is your when and if you enter into surrender. If you enter into surrender of the human free will to the cosmic and divine will, then by the law of reciprocity, power floods into you. This is cosmic power. This power that floods into you is therefore an increase in your capacity to bring something into manifestation that can sustain, that can build. How do you do so? You do so by becoming a seed to the field. The more you are exercising this cosmic power, the more you are seeding the field of potential. You are seeding the karmic field. You are seeding the Buddhic field. You are seeding the field of pure realization. You are seeding the path of return to soul self-realization at the level beyond the manifest soul to the level beyond the manifest soul grouping aggregates, and then to the levels beyond the soulic aggregates into spirit aggregates, into accessing the Lords of creation, into the Lord of existence, and onto source. Within your bio matrix is the capacity to experience nearly unlimited, nearly infinite dimensionality. Why do I say nearly? Because the experientiation of dimensionality requires the progressive pre-dimensionality state in order that there be sustainability to allow for the entry of the next tiers of dimensions and perspectives. In order for that to be experienced, there must be stability in the continuous process of dimensional expansion at your biomatrix level, in its deepest level, the quantum matrix, and your morphogenetic matrix. We speak of the 12-dimensional nature of the morphogenetic matrix, for example. But we say the DNA is not activated at 12 dimensions yet. But it is not proper to say that it is a 3-dimensional matrix. So the latent capacity, meaning the capacity that's there but it's not yet fully realized within your morphogenetic biomatrix, is this capacity for 12 dimensions and beyond. The cosmos itself is infinitely dimensional. The full purpose and full realization of that which is Bindu is to give, therefore, infinite perspectivity and infinite dimensionality to the flows of the infinitudes, all of the infinite streams, the infinite streams. Therefore, to be realized in Bindu and to serve as such requires, in manifestation, requires the activations and the evolutions and the stabilizations of additional dimensionality within the morphogenetic biomatrix and the morpho-quantum biomatrix. Make sense so far? You're smiling. You got a question.
Does it make sense? My mind starts to explode, but I'm opening to the field and receiving the information, so I'm really happy to hear that. Thank you.
And so, the law of reciprocity. The law of attraction, people talk about this a lot. It is on the YouTube channel. You can watch it if you wish. People want the law of attraction. The law of attraction in the everyday human experience is mostly limited to the CCE1 of a human, the convenient consciousness envelope, their idea of the self, and their self in relation to the universe or God or creator or whatever. Therefore, that perspective is a self-indulgent perspective. What I want, they want to give me. God will give me billions of dollars. I just have to be clear about what I want. Put it out there. The universe will give it back. God will give me a new Mercedes. God will give me a new church upon this land. All of these kinds of notions. God will give me sex, 5 orgasms a night. Whatever it is that someone wants. This is the vulgarization. It means that it's taking something that is esoteric and bringing it down to the level of commonplace. So the sacredness of something in vulgarization, the sacredness falls away. The higher and deeper meaning of something falls away. So when it becomes vulgarized, it means it becomes used by everyday kind of people without regard to the higher, deeper understanding, without regard to the sacred nature of something. So there has been gross vulgarization of the law of attraction in the human experience. How many times do you guys host events? And the people who come, some of the people, the most thing that they're most concerned with while they come there is to figure out how they can use some of these sacred principles to get themselves abundance, financial abundance, relationship abundance. They are trying to take cosmic principles and turn it into being babysat by the cosmos. Self-indulged within the CCE1 level, you see? Now, this happens because people are not aware. As far as they're concerned, most of them, even if they have billions of dollars, this is all that really matters to them. If there's something more that's a little bit more, that's their sense of family, community, there's their sense of a little bit of spirit. But don't go too far there because you got to die first. Don't go too far there because if you contact some of those beings, then you better get scared because those are ghosts. You want to contact your ancestral beings, but at the same time, if you open yourself to truly believe that they are there, that you can contact them, then you'll open yourself to the demons too, and that's too scary, so you better stay down here and save this stuff until after you die. That's their expansion parameters, you see? The law of attraction, therefore, may work to some degree that they can realize, but mostly it's just hit or miss. Sometimes you say, well, I prayed for this and I got a check in the mail. I'm so happy. God is good. These kinds of things. But there are many other signs that it's not working very well. But you also have cases where someone has been dedicated and strongly trying to apply these principles. And they watch The Secret and they read the books and they go to the seminars and they do their vision boards and they write their list and they do all of these things. And it just seems like nothing much is happening for them. Why? They say, but I am so sincere. I know exactly what I want. So why isn't the law of attraction helping me? Because there is something else that is more powerful than the law of attraction. It is more powerful. There is more power in bringing something into manifestation and sustaining it. And what is that? That is the law of reciprocity. The law of reciprocity is how the cosmos, how the universe responds to your soul's directive. Your soul's directive. Not your dense little human world experience. What I want. But they tell me on television. They tell me on television what to want. All the billboards all over. Advertising this. Don't you want to eat this? Don't you want to have this? Don't you want to live this way? The whole environment is telling me what I'm supposed to want. How cosmic is that? Do you think that that's what the essence of existence is? To say you're in touch with the cosmos so that when Donald Trump puts some shiny gold on something, that you want it and the universe is supposed to give it to you? This is all there is? And if you don't have it, even though you're a good-hearted person, you think somehow you're a failure in this universe because the universe is not giving you abundance. This is the thinking. You dress up in your long, flowy, spiritual clothing and wear your beads and your crystals and all of these things and go around like this and have ceremonies and everything. And what most people are still there wanting is money. They're wanting their idea of abundance. And they're thinking that if they become holy enough, that they will be rewarded. This is very important to understand. The law of reciprocity, therefore, is not responding to Donald Trump and the advertising agencies. The law of reciprocity is responding to your soul aggregate consciousness. It says, this is what came to this planet for this purpose. You get to the planet, you have human free will. So as soon as you get into a physical body, you have human free will. You can let go of the reason why you came here. You have the right now. You have the right because you now have been given this right from the cosmos to choose. One moment you are not incarnated and you come here on assignment. You receive a body. Your assignment is now questionable. The moment you receive the body, your assignment is questionable. Why? Because you must declare it. If you forget, then free will take over, and you will want bicycles and toys and cars and sex and money and things. And you will spin yourself in a mania, wanting. It is your right. It is your right to become entrapped. However, so therefore you play with the law of attraction by wanting more. And the law of attraction itself, because of want, doesn't work very well for manifesting. And because we are trying to apply cosmic principles to give us experiences in this dense realm, that is like saying, look at my clothing. It is full of mud and paint and dirt and grime and everything. If I can just take some air and fan some air on it, it will become instantly clean. The difference between this dense material full of dirt and the subtle nature of the air is not going to clean it. So you cannot call upon these cosmic principles to bring you money in your life. Do you know what that is? That is magic. That is the essence of magic. Trying to manipulate spiritual and cosmic forces and energies to serve an agenda of a CCE1. You can mix it up over here and put it in some tradition, call it witchcraft. You can take it over here and put it in another tradition and call it druids. You can take it over here and put it in another tradition and call it this or this or this or this. But the bottom line is that it is about CCE1 consciousness trying to manipulate higher energies to serve CCE1 consciousness. Make sense? You can call it holy as much as you want, but it isn't. This is what it is. So, while this is happening, what else is happening inside your biomatrix. The energies that you may access, the portals that you may open, you are not able to sustain. You do not have the capacity to sustain a resonance with those higher energies. You may interact with them for a bit. You may interface with them, but you cannot sustain that process. Why? Because you are too dense. And these are higher. Even the very low demonics are higher than energetically than the human density experience. You see? So when people are manipulating energies and then they are accessing and opening these portals, stuff is coming through that they cannot handle. And if something comes into their biomatrix, they cannot handle that. Until and unless you undergo transmutation. You see? Okay. Now, the law of reciprocity helps facilitate the transmutation process and the evolution of the morphogenetic matrix. The law of reciprocity is responding to the soulic directive. This astro-soulic being, this intelligence incarnates, informates, it comes into form, fleshy form, in a human vessel. Now it experiences choice. It experiences, because of the density of this field, the first thing that it experiences is it's beginning to rapidly forget what it is, why it is, what it came here for, what it came from. Because the environment, the more it is assaulted by this environment, the more quickly it experiences further separation from source. This is another reason why it is criminal to inject these babies at birth with all of these toxic chemicals and substances, many of which contain heavy metals which go directly to damage the nervous system and go to damage the immune system. But what this is all serving to do is to calcify the pineal gland as early as possible so that the third eye will be closed. You can deliver calcification to the pineal gland in as little as the first year of life now. If you expose all of these children to these things. And therefore, the process of remaining open and the process of continuing to evolve the morphogenetic biomatrix, the process gets blocked. You see? Now, if you become aware that you do not fit in this world very easily as a regular person, all my life I have felt like I don't belong here. All my life I have felt like I come from someplace else. All my life I felt strange hanging out with regular everyday kids. Don't know exactly why, I just never felt like I fit in. And then I try to do these things. I go to their church and I pray and I ask for God to give me something. But it doesn't seem to happen. Or I go to their self-help books and I go to their seminars and I read and I listen and all of these things. And they say I should be praying for abundance, for all this money, all of these things. But really, there's something else about me that just doesn't seem to fit with all of that. I'm not sure what it is. And then at some point, there may be some guidance. There may be some intervention. It may seem like an arbitrary random experience. It might seem like a stroke of luck. They have an experience. Something triggers inside of them. And that something triggers inside of them. They have a kind of moment. And this is higher vibrational spirit. Spirit. Inspiration means spirit going in. Expiration means spirit going out. This is why in medicine we use the term for death. We say he expired. Patient expired. The spirit left them. Expiritus. Okay? So this, and you may notice this sometimes when you are in journey states or you're in ceremonies, even without the sacrament, but just when it is a very sacred ceremony, very intense energy field, you will see this kind of process happen. This is higher frequency spirit energies entering the person. This is a connection at their soulic level, the soulic aggregate, with that which is the overseer layer. And there is decisioning that takes place at that moment. That decisioning is, I accept, I declare, or not. If there is declaration, declare means de claritas, from clarity. From that clarity you declare. When you declare, maybe it's just not for me to make $100 million in this lifetime. Maybe it's not for me to become the head of the country or to become the best piano player or the best singer or whatever it is. Maybe that's not what I'm here for. Maybe there's something else. Maybe there's some other plan that God has for me. How come if I sit in a group with a bunch of people and we all talk about how to become successful, all of them become successful except for me? But I helped this one. I helped that one. I helped this one. They all became successful with my help, but I'm stuck unable to pay my bills. And they're running off having champagne at the, in Ibiza, someplace like this. Why? Maybe the realization that it is not my path in this life. My path is something else. Then the person says, I accept that there is another path for me. My intention now is to know why I am here, who I really am, and why I am here. This declaration activates the law of reciprocity. Next thing that happens can happen very quickly. All of a sudden, stuff comes your way and it changes your life. You may go to work the next day and they boot you out the door and you've been there for 12, 20 years. Why are you firing me? Oh, we have budget cuts. We have to lay you off. Sorry. Something like that. All your job security just went away. Maybe your house catches on fire and all the things are your artwork and all those things you were attached to, reasons that you couldn't move, you couldn't change, you couldn't try a different approach in your life. That is taken away from you. You say, well, where's this law of attraction supposed to be? This infinitely loving universe. Why am I being treated this way? What is happening is the law of reciprocity is clearing the path for you now to express who you truly are and why you are here. And why you are here at a cosmic, divine, and astral and spiritual plane level doesn't have anything to do with how much status you have in this world, how much money you have in this world, how much fame you have in this world. That stuff is so juvenile. So it begins to clear that stuff out so that you can understand your path. And when this is happening, if you have guidance for how to properly interpret it, if you have training in your spiritual practice, particularly the training of stillness, if you have been introduced to at least still allow beyond, if you've been introduced at least to something like that, to begin to witness your life and to begin to listen on a more subtle level, and if you have some guidance and some instruction in some of the processes that relate to the understanding of the functions of the mind and the fields of awareness, then you begin to see, I am actually entering into a relationship with spirit, into a relationship with the field, a relationship with God, whatever one may call it. Now, in that process, you may become more aware. You may try a church. I go down here and join this church. I feel so good, finally. And maybe that is where you stay the rest of your life. You have found a niche. If you go into that environment and you find fulfillment, and you simply have a realization that I am here to serve God in this particular way. Maybe because of the church, I decide I want to be involved in helping children, homeless children, displaced children. And so through our church, we start an orphanage. Okay? And then you feel, this is my purpose. I came here to be close to God in doing this kind of work. I am fulfilled. The law of reciprocity will support that. Things get cleared for these services to be provided. However, that may not be the fulfillment of who I am and why I am. So I come into the church environment, and then I realize after a while, I have to move on. Maybe there's things I see that just are not right. Maybe it's not this church. Maybe it could be another church. You look and look and look. But for someone who is a cosmic master, mastress, part of the way that you recognize that that is what you are is you will realize that it is not through the institutional control of any religion that you are realizing God in a way that is fulfilling. What then begins to happen is a realization that it is not the turning inward and that kind of devotion that is your soul's directive. You may realize it is the turning outward. The turning outward is service to source. And then the religion starts to fall away. The institutions start to fall away. And then the Christed, Buddhic, Krishna, Shiva, etc., all of these consciousnesses begin to have a different meaning in terms of your understanding and your sense of who you are and why you are. If that is the case, you are identifying that you are not a level 4 soul, you are a level 5 soul. level 5 soul. Therefore, in this lifetime, or the lifetimes of a level 5 soul, the cosmic directive of level 5 souls is the attainment of full awakenedness. How many lifetimes does that take? What Master Lord Aetherius is talking about in the teachings, when he says sometimes in one lifetime you can make many, many jumps. How do you make those jumps? And thus come forth these teachings. So most of the teachings of the Aetherius Society are designed for level 5 people. This is why it sounds like kook stuff. This is why it sounds like a cult. Because they're for level 5 souls to awaken. So if a level 4 soul comes there and wants to really experience closeness with God, they don't often get satisfied. Because it's too cosmic. There's too much of this. These cosmic masters, these lords, things of this sort. It's the understanding of the cosmology and the connection with the cosmology. It's not the same as just Jesus is here. Jesus, my Lord and Savior. You see? Or Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. It's not that orientation. Or Islam. You see? It is much more cosmic. And so this is why many people come, most people leave. They don't stay if they do get exposed to it in the first place. Let alone to think, wait a minute, Jesus coming back here? If Jesus came back here, why aren't they talking about it in every Christian church on the corner? Why are these the only people talking about Jesus coming back? So it must not be real. This is why they cannot grasp it, you see? But if you have that sense that your trajectory is the trajectory of enlightenment, and if you are willing to commit yourself to the path of enlightenment, then the law of reciprocity will immediately be activated, and things will begin to happen to you. The first of which will test your commitment. I went to that experience. It was totally clear, and I said, yes, this is what I must experience. I must dedicate myself to. And the law of reciprocity was activated, and all of a sudden, your life is coming apart. And you go, shit, this is not what I asked for. I thought it was going to be all bliss. I thought everything was going to be so wonderful because I finally understand who I am and what my purpose is. And I come back and I lost my job, lost my relationship, lost my money, lost my whatever. Maybe I lost my health. Maybe I lost my freedom. Whatever it is. So this isn't so good. This is your first test. Are you willing to see that this is the path being cleared for you? Or are you going to retreat back into your CCE1? So this is critical for guidance. You will have some who are just there. Just there. How can you guide them? Now, if they have a couple experiences like that and they reaffirm this is who they are, this is why they are, then the practice begins. That is transmutation practice. We're back to the question of transmutation, you see. Because to become enlightened, to become awakened, to become truly that, versus just having a moment where you could see the cosmos open up. That is just a state. That state could close down. The stage is your evolution of your capacity. And you can evolve in your capacity to a considerable degree. But the world of samsara will bring you back into contraction. Maybe not all the way down to here, the way you were before. But you get all the way out here and it brings you to like this. So you walk around, you're a holy person. You walk around, you're a good, kind person. You walk around and you know these principles, and you may study the books, the Vedic books, the Buddhic books, whatever they are, all these esoteric spiritual things. You're in the mystery school. You might be yourself holding the mystery school, but you are still here. You've contracted to here. And there are gurus and yogis and masters all over this planet who are walking around and experience this expansion, and they now are down to here in contraction. But compared to most people who cannot judge this level of expansion, you see, they look like superhumans. They look like divine beings because the people are mostly down here. So if this one can experience, I have the power to heal you, to make the cancer disappear. I have the power to levitate. I have the power to be in more than one location at a time. Whatever, power to come to you in your dreams. They may be called divine beings. They may have gotten so full of themselves, as comparing themselves to most of humanity. They experience this. And humanity is ready to worship them. You see. Sometimes by the millions, they will be worshipped. To go from here, though, to this, that is what is called the eversional expansion. It is expanding the envelope of consciousness of the self, and then it everts, means it turns outward. And this disintegrates. Stages of the self disintegrating into the cosmic field of pure realization requires morphogenetic biomatrix to mutate, to transmutate, to hold these higher capacities. Make sense? Okay. So, this is why when you're doing journey work, what you're going to determine in these stages is the degree of sincerity to discover who one is and why one is. That's one of the first principles of doing shamanic work. The sincerity to discover who one is and why one is. Why one is here in this life. Now, if I'm trapped in my emotional wounds, if I'm addicted to pleasure, if I have no discipline and so easily distracted, and I come to your ceremonies and come to your spiritual gatherings, how much am I likely to awaken in that environment? How much am I to really realize who I am? I'm not. I'll have a good time, maybe, unless there's some other shenanigans, as they call it, people who are doing certain things that are just not right, not pleasurable for me. And so I spent all this money, I flew over there, I went to the event, I didn't get what I wanted. Now I'm unhappy. There were a few people like that from the Netherlands. These are not people who are looking to awaken. These are people who are in the CCE1 that is contracted like so, and they're looking for pleasure, they're looking for their expectations to be met, they're looking to indulge the self-experience, not to liberate from the self. Okay? So you start to see from these kinds of perspectives, rather than the judgment of character, rather than the judgment of behavior, your prime perspective is consciousness. And you begin to see the dynamics of their consciousness. And when you see that, you realize, okay, this is how this person is. And this is the stage. And then later you may begin to actually see the soul age. You have that kind of understanding. But those then who do show themselves as sincere in that intent to realize who I am, why I am, you must give special attention to them. You must nurture that process so that they are giving themselves permission to have the realization. Your teachings then will be teachings about some of these cosmic laws. Sometimes you may have to guide them by saying, there is a good possibility that if you were to have the realization of who you really are and why you really are, that the life that you know may turn completely inside out. Are you willing to face that possibility? If they hesitate, well, I have a family, I have a job, I have obligations and commitments. You don't press them. What you can do is you can offer them the path. You can offer them some guidance in terms of how things may be for them when they feel they want to explore more. You also want to be very sincere with them and allow them to understand that they are vulnerable to exploitation, to being exploited. Because there is something more that they know is there. They cannot hide from it. The best they may be able to do is say, I know there's more. Maybe I'll get to it later. So what you can offer them is some of the personal life, spiritual practice, which can give them a way to understand bit by bit without feeling that they are being controlled by someone else, without feeling that they have no permission, without feeling that they are being exploited. You give them some basic guiding steps that way. Now, in the journey space, when you are dealing with those who are declared, they are declared, and the law of reciprocity is happening, then the law of reciprocity will also happen to activate the potential at the genetic biomatrix level, morphogenetic field. So then you have certain exercises that are important to teach. And you must be willing and ready to teach these exercises by being this kind of consciousness, not being external to the consciousness. It is like if you were to say, I want to learn to master Aikido, Kung Fu, and somebody says, here's the book. It's got all the pictures in it. It's got all the diagrams. And you look and you say, okay, step number 3, step number 4. And you memorize these steps. You will not be a master of this art. But that is what many people do who call themselves spiritual guides, who call themselves masters. They tell you, do this, now think of this, now visualize this, breathe this way, all of this. It doesn't work. It gives you a lot of sensation. So once again, if you're an addict for sensation, you'll pay. And then you come back and pay to level 2. You come back and pay level 3 and 5 and 6, and then you finally, after 10 levels and $150,000 or something like that, you might get the title of master. But this is not what we're talking about. We're talking about you must be the path. You must be the KDIUCL. You can't just keep talking about it. You must be it. And when you teach, you must teach as it. You see? And so as they come to understand what that really is, it is because of direct experience, not just the mental part of it, not just the ideas. You see? They must experience that. The way they are to experience it is because you are the embodiment of it. And then they come to understand that resonance. They're in flow with you. And there, in that state, you can guide them with words. And you can guide them with images. You can guide them with exercises. But cannot depart from the KDIUCL. Does that make sense? So, while this is happening, you have to bring in those teachings which address the morphogenic field as it interfaces with the morphogenetic field. The morphogenic field, we can all be here and we can all be intending love. Love and peace and harmony. We can pray together, we can chant together, we can meditate together. And someone can walk in and the energy is very strong. It's like you walk into the Ethereal Society, you felt the energy when you sit down. It's very powerful in there. Okay? That's a morphogenetic field. Okay, it is sustained. To go from there to the morphogenetic field, there's more. There's more that is required. What is required then, the being of the KDIUCL and the understanding of what works in the mind field, what those 7 dimensions are, in order to bring in the dimension of power to activate transmutation at the morphogenetic matrix level. And through such power activating this transmutation, there is realization, which is guiding the process. So you are now functioning at least as a 9-dimensional being when you are consciously activating your own morphogenetic matrix. And it is transmuting to have greater capacities. Now, while this is happening, your physical body will change. Certain organs may not function the way they used to function. Certain physical traits, even on the outside, may look different. You may have all kinds of transitions in your body that look like diseases. All of them have to be addressed with KDIUCL. If you suddenly realize you're growing of cancer in your chest, you may be growing the cancer because that is the law of reciprocity. And that is part of the transmutation of the morphogenetic matrix. Now, if you do not activate KDI-UCL, that might destroy you. But if you maintain KDI-UCL, then that highest consciousness is nurturing the genetic expressions so that they do not become harmful, and they begin to contribute to your overall morphogenetic and your overall morphogenic biomatrix envelope, which is called your integral awareness matrix, and then your intention awareness matrix, that consciousness that then holds within the deeper self. Your mind changes, your ability to perceive, that's your integral awareness. Your intelligence expands in all of these different ways. And then you become an I am one, your integral awareness mastery. All of these things are working for you because you are remaining in selfless service. You're remaining in the intent of awakening. Now, here's one of your challenges. How do you survive during this time? How do you make a living if so much is changing inside of you? The things you were attached to that you thought were so important, that you thought you absolutely needed, even things you thought you needed to do, even teaching you thought you needed to do, even all of your body of work, all the books you've written and all the lectures you've given and all of these things, and they may begin to look like no longer necessary, truly meaningless. So how do you live? This is part of what a Sangha does, the spiritual community. This is how the support can come in those environments, where the understanding is that the field that is being created is a field that has its power through selfless service. You will have the awareness come into you of all kinds of ways you can do things to bring material abundance into your life. All kinds of ways. At the same time, you will have the realization how much of that is serving your CCE1. You go, oh, well, I can go do that. I can go do that. I can do this. That'll take care of the money problem, or that'll take care of the whatever problem, whatever all these needs. But you will immediately have the awareness that this is the trade-off. There comes the CCE1. The egoic construct reconsolidates at the CCE1 level. This is very, very critical. This is a level of authenticity that is far beyond what most people are talking about when they have their training programs, Tony Robbins or the Landmark Forum or some things like this, when they talk about being authentic in this human potential movement. The authenticity here is that of a being who has attained cosmic awareness, a being who has declared their path of awakening, and then what compromises they are willing to allow themselves to fall into. That's the question. So it is important to have support. It is important to know that you are changing. Now, if you are given a directive that you have a certain responsibility, mind you, you've already let go of your right to human free will. You are now in service to cosmic and divine will. So you may be sitting there in meditation, you may be in a sacred ceremony. You may be walking down the street. You may be driving your car on the highway. You have the realization. What happens is, earlier on, you may hear voices. You may hear a voice. That may be your guide, or some guides whispering into your ear. But eventually, when you are expanded, it is not about voices, it's just realization. Driving your car, and it's like, cancel all my appointments today. Turn around, go over here, go into meditation. Because you're responding to the directive. There's not a question, where did that come from? What was that about? Now what do I do? This is the path. Remember, the transmission, the lecture that Dr. King was giving, if I could have it my way, what he was saying is, if he were exercising human free will, for all the cosmic nature of his beingness and all that he had experienced, all that he had done, it would be nice that I'd like to choose that for me. That would make me feel good. That's what he was essentially saying, even though it was service. He was saying, that would be for me. But he was also saying, I am not entitled to that. I don't have that, you see. I must do what I am told to do. So these are the challenges along the way. If it is necessary, so be it. Now, to get there, there are two areas which may come up for your realization, and they may not come up. So I am not telling you that you need to do what I did. But I am telling you that they may come up in the field of realization. And when they do, at those levels, you can still choose, because that is part of declaration. What is it? One is the question of your soul aggregate. You may be in state, in meditation, in the emptiness almost. You may be in ceremony. And in that process of your stillness, there comes realization. Realization. Level 9 consciousness, just pure realization. In the realization is the nature of the soulic identity and the connection of that soulic identity with this physicality. The connection of that soulic identity even with the cognitive consciousness of this being. And the question may come, what to do about this soulic existence. And so, this is what happened here, and that was in April of 2011, at about 8 hours into meditation. And when that realization came, there was no hesitation. It was just, and it was done. What was it? It was renouncing the soul. That all that had been in existence as this soul-body fusion this special little soul being with this special path in life, who had already been identified in prophecies here and there, and who was loved by many and hated by a few. And suddenly it was like, give it up, let it go. So I released the soul. What is it like to be a body without a soul? To be a consciousness and intelligence that is inhabiting a biomatrix? Many traditions will say that is the most dangerous, vulnerable state to be in, because all kinds of entities can come in. And there can be a fragmentation of the consciousness and the self, of course. But that was through realization. Release the soul. And then this went on, and then about 6 weeks or 8 weeks later, after about 6 hours into meditation, came the second major crossroads. And that was the realization to release all entitlements. All entitlements. Not simply entitlement to ownership of something. All entitlements, including the entitlement of existence, the entitlement for love, the entitlement for air to breathe, the entitlement of respect, the entitlement to be treated in a certain kind of way, to release all entitlements. And if one releases all entitlements, there's only something left, which is appreciation. However, there is energy directed towards this one, there is appreciation. If there is another breath this is allowed to take, there is appreciation. The idea this is my right, the idea this is my entitlement, the idea that I must be respected, the idea that you must not bullshit me, the idea that I deserve to eat and to travel and have freedom and all of these things. All of those things you let go. Now, from there, then came the next level of assignments. Many other assignments in the cosmic realms on behalf of the solar system, on behalf of the planet. And then this was followed later that year by the pictures that I've shown some, with the big giant halo and the rainbow and all of this kind of stuff. When you become a cosmic being, when you are willing to let go of all of these layers, including the language layer inside, because that language, those thoughts, affect your morphogenetic matrix. And so if your morphogenetic matrix is in transmutation, your language has to change. Otherwise, it'll keep driving it back to sustaining the status quo, which is the CCE one. Make sense? In the transmutation and the enlightenment of Yeshua HaMashiach, when he went from being Jesus of Nazareth to Jesus the Christ, there is a saying, there's an account in the Bible where his mother sees him, and he's been gone for all of these years. He's been gone to India and China. He's been all of these places. And she rushes up to him and, oh, my son, I love you. I've missed you so much. And he turns to her and he says, woman, I do not know you. Doesn't mean you're a stranger to me. What he was saying is that you are projecting your little boy, Jesus. But he had attained Christ's consciousness. He had transmuted. He was no longer the same beingness, you see. And so that degree of transmutation is what you will have to navigate. As I said, these are two key issues that directly affect the process of transmutation of the morphogenetic matrix. But it is not for this one to recommend that you accept either of those choices. These were choices that were made by this one. It is your realization that will have it clear to you what is the choice, what is the decision, what is the declaration. Now, if the idea of something like that is a little more unsettling, then what will happen is you will avoid it. There's a certain alarm system inside. You may be in deep meditation, deep ceremony, everything is wonderful. And you start to get to that stage where this is beginning to happen. Eversion of the self construct starting to happen. And all of a sudden you get a cramp in your leg. Oh, it pulls you right out of meditation. You know? Or something falls off the wall. Like the other night. Remember? Something to distract you, bring you back, Ken. Things of this sort. Because it is clear by the beings who are in your field at that time that you are ready or you are not ready for something to the next level. And so they will be there to help you, help guide you, help protect you. And even though you have given your consent, you have given your release of your human free will, your release of human free will only applies to the degree that you have realization. And so since you are on a journey of awakening and expansion, I release my human free will and I expand to here. But if my release of human free will doesn't mean I instantly go to here, correct? So what happens is I begin to experience the expansion of consciousness and I have realization. My power experience is the sustainment of this expansion. With little power, I contract. With greater power, I sustain. See? And in this state, there is realization and acceding or accepting, embracing the realization activates the more subtle expansion. And then the power within that realization is to create an expansion of awareness of consciousness. And the eighth dimension of power is the stabilizing of it. And then there is this further. And then there is the understanding that the soul body is part of the consciousness envelope of the self. And there may be the realization that in order to achieve the eversion and the disintegration of the self, it requires, perhaps, the release of the soul. Does that make sense? Now, this process may begin and it may be underway. And what is happening is the witness to the process and the fact that this being still has to get up in the morning and go to work, or go to the toilet, or have family, live in this world. Then the ego construct, the cosmic energy that is the ego, not the brain ego, not Freud's ego, but the cosmic essence that is the ego, is to return something to integrity, to sustain its integrity. So the egoic layer of the self-construct and the consciousness envelope that is in this great expanded state, the ego dimension is to prevent the eversion and the disintegration. The ego is to try to hold integration, however, at this vastly expanded state. From this vastly expanded state, this kind of being still has to walk around in the world, okay? Only they're walking around in the world like this super awake being, this super holy person doing miracles. And people are noticing it. And then they want to love you, and they want to adore you, and they want to worship you, and they want to create a church around you, or put you in power, and do all of these kinds of things. It was 7 years ago. A bunch of wealthy and powerful Chinese wanted to set me up in something that they wanted to call me the super guru. And they wanted to charge $50,000 an hour for my time. $50,000 an hour. Super guru. Have me go to China and spend time with government officials and things like this, which I did. But it was not within the trajectory for me to become a commodity. And so that was preempted. But this is an example, you see. You have this expansion here. This is why for this one, it was necessary to release entitlements. Because the world will take you here and say, you are entitled to everything. This is what happened to Osho. He's entitled to 93 Rolls Royces. He's entitled to all of these people adoring him. He's entitled to people breaking the law for him and breaking cosmic laws. Because he developed, this is what has happened with Nityananda. They develop a sense of divine entitlement. And this divine entitlement state prevents dissolution of the self-construct, you see? You just happen to be this much instead of this much. So at that state, realization may come that overwhelms the power of the egoic sustainment of this expanded self. These powers may still be residing in the being here. So they can walk around and look like they're a Superman or woman. They're doing all kinds of things, walking through walls and teleporting. They're healing. They're doing all kinds of things because, yes, they have power at this state. Yet power can be superseded by realization, further realization. Does this make sense? Now, through this further realization may come the realization of what is sustaining this envelope. Thus, there may be the realization that entitlement is part of what is sustaining it. That deservedness is part of what is sustaining it. That karma is part of what is sustaining it. That I am super special because I did all of the work, all the spiritual work. That I am part of the lineage because when I go on my spiritual journeys, look, there it is. I was once Khufu, or I was this being, or I was this being, I was this sacred, this cosmic being who came to earth before. Now I've come back again. Entitlement fills the mind. See? And so the decision to abdicate, to release entitlement, places all of that at risk. What is key here is decisioning in KDI-UCL. It's very important. Maintenance of the cosmic divine infinite unconditional compassionate love is the means to achieve the eversion, the turning outward and the disintegrating of the self envelope. That is the frequency. That is the consciousness intention. If you are deep in journey space and your heart stops beating, if you realize in journey space that you are not breathing, you stay in KDI-UCM. You may be there for an hour or longer. Your heart is not beating. Or maybe it's beating once or twice a minute, something of this nature. Maybe you take a breath once every 20 minutes. Maybe you have left your body and the others are looking at it and it is lifeless. And the brain activity, if they hooked you up, would be zero. So you must maintain KDI-UCL. If it is necessary to go back into the body, that's the only way you're going to get there. Unless you have not attained that state and you are just having what is the beginning of the death experience. And then medicine and shocking you, or people praying for you and your guardians take you out, put you back in. But if you have been in these processes and you're attaining these expansions, you must maintain the KDI-UCM. Because you may be out here and you may be surrounded by demons of all kinds of levels of power. And all they have to do, they don't have to destroy you. They just have to distract you. They just have to tempt you into your ego again. They can seduce you. These kinds of diversions. So you must maintain KDI-UCL. Every time you have that experience, particularly if you are holding the KDI-UCL, then your genetic biomatrix is activating further to sustain that state. Now you may contract afterwards down here because it takes time for further integration. What has happened in the field of pure realization still requires those vibrations to come into resonance, to create standing waves, and to create an altered field. And then that becomes densified, and that translates into chemicals and molecules and genetic strands at the physical level. You see how it works? Okay. So this is what you look for. And when you have had some of these experiences, you may find yourselves having less interest in volumes of people that you interact with, even in teachings. You can teach something very simple that you used to seem like it was very complex to you. Now it seems very simple to you. But it's very complex to all of these people here. And before, you wanted to teach everybody and make millions of dollars and become such a famous spiritual leader. And now that may have left you. It's not necessary. What is necessary may be just, what is the quality of student? Who is truly committed? Who is understood there on a certain path? Who has demonstrated their soul is at a certain level of age and evolution? These will be also the things that come to. So, this is the lecture of this moment.
Wow.
Yes.
When the new realizations are coming, there's a the energetic focus, at least how I see it, the energetic focus of awareness raises, then there's a defragmentation. And is there a pathway or some guidance on bringing that back or making that consistent or stabilizing that, something specific? For when going out and gathering information and expanding awareness to then just be back in the body and be able to.
Remember, I mentioned the term the custodian of the biomatrix. Here I have me, okay? Me, myself, and I. There's me in my brain, there's me in my soul, there's me in my body, me in my emotions, me inside of my environment, me in my world. This is all about me, okay? That's a CCE1. Okay. In the process of learning and expanding, I become full of myself because I'm spiritual. I'm still in the CCE1. Okay? I'm just better, some kind of way. There may come the time, though, when the CCE1 is in the process of merging with the CCE3, not the CCE2. CCE2 is the collective consciousness envelope, and most of the time that's where people go into that when they have group identification. And the upper ends of that spectrum, yes, that is when they are starting to feel connected with everything. But generally the CCE2 is just an extension of the CCE1. Like, I'm a white, conservative, backwoods, middle American, racist patriot, okay? And Trump is my closest thing to God on earth. That's a CCE1. However, I identify with a bunch of other people who are like that. And when we get together, there's such a closeness, there's such a feeling like, yeah, we're the same. That's a CCE2. You see? The collective consciousness envelope. So that CCE2 isn't necessarily much more evolved than a CCE1. But within the CCE2, there may be activities which nurture expansion of consciousness. This is what a church is supposed to do. This is what a spiritual community is supposed to do, right? You come into that environment and you find people in a community that support one another. And hopefully they support one another with love rather than collective hatred, right? So if they're supporting each other with love and then they're trying to apply certain principles of God is love and peace and nonviolence and health and be kind to the environment and things like this, then yes, this CCE2 can experience expansion within that community. And sometimes, towards the upper limits of the CCE2 spectrum, they begin to experience some awakening into cosmic consciousness. So some of them will. This is why you will see in an ashram or a monastery, why you will see in some of the spiritual communities where there is an enlightened master who is the head of that community, the Sangha. Only a few out of the entire Sangha may attain cosmic awareness, because most of them are there to be devoted to the Sangha, to just be identified. I'm a follower of such and such a guru, you know, or I belong to the Church of Enlightened Science, Mind, and all of this kind of thing. Agapians, a lot of them, you see. You have some people who've been coming to the Theory Society. You met some of them who've been coming for 30 years or more. 40 40.
Yeah, that whole.
Okay. So they come and they have an identification, but that doesn't mean they attain enlightenment, you see? So they are in the CCE2 level. But they don't necessarily ascend to the limits of the CCE2. A person who generally is declared of the path of the fully awakening journey and was activated the law of reciprocity, that this beingness may bypass a lot of the stages of CCE2. They may have a very solitary path. They go over here to try out a church for a little bit, and it's okay, it was nice. I don't need to be there, you see. Or they go over here into a certain community, they're doing some esoteric practices and things of that sort, and they say, oh, that's fine. They go over here and somebody wants to bow down and worship them, and they go, don't need that. And so their life becomes just more limited and enclosed. Because what they're doing is they're doing the process of disaggregating and the process of disintegrating the self-construct. And as that is happening, they begin to experience the eversional state. First as states of consciousness, temporary states of consciousness, until they become more stabilized in the expanded self. And here's where it gets dangerous. They experience this, return to this. Experience this, return to this. When they experience this, they activate the cosmic Maras. These are the demonics who hold reign over the realm, who control the realm of illusion, of Maya, of samsara. So it is dangerous because from here, this level, into being into the cosmic field, and then returning, the Mara is activated, and the Mara, one of the first levels of the Mara's activation is to get your language right back into your head that says, look what I just experienced. I just experienced. You see? Here it's not I. Here it's I. And just that turning back inward. If you indulge the I, the ego energy, cosmic ego energy, will want to consolidate and create an integrous, super expanded CCE1 that's trying to appear to be a CCE3. Make sense? It's only subtle differences. At this level, the ego is working overtime because the Maras are activating the egoic energy. As they are activating the egoic energy, when the perspective, this is again understanding Bindu consciousness, when the perspective is shifted from inward directed consciousness to outward disintegrating directed consciousness, just that shift in perspective creates the mechanism for the Maras to work with egoic cosmic energy to reconstruct a mindset which says, I am. The I. And as long as this is happening, the more this is allowed to happen and sustained, the less there will be the further expansion. There will not be the full disintegration, and therefore there will not be the ascension in consciousness into the Buddhic Christic field. Understand how that happens? Okay. Now, your question. What to do? witness desire as different from intent. I want to become enlightened. I want to become enlightened. I so much want to become enlightened. This is desire. You will never become enlightened with that kind of desire. Enlightenment is the transcendence of desire. So even if you desire something good, you're still trapped in the desire. Okay? So you have to release that. You release the desire to become awakened. You submit yourself in service, KDIUCL. Just in service. You stop identifying with your body, because it ain't your body anyway. You've already realized that. Probably. So what are you? There is, if you have gotten to the stage where it was clear and you then declared the release and the renouncing, the surrender of the soul body, then what would that make you? A soulless what? It makes you a soulless vessel of intelligence, cosmic intelligence, spiritual intelligence, consciousness that is inhabiting a physical structure. That is what you are. So you're no longer a person of this country. You're no longer this little kid who grew up in this family. You're no longer all of those things. That is not what is the consciousness that is occupying this biomatrix. Make sense?
Yes.
It's a challenge. Because your language, you haven't learned your language yet. And your language is the language that still makes you want to be a you. Every time you say, or I'm trying to refer, what's the word to refer? Me, my, I. You see? And what's the word to refer? You, he, it, them. These pronouns are all there. This is why you learn some things at the Integral Institute when you get to Boulder. Learn the integral operating system. Learn the integral operating system and then learn how it affects consciousness to attain the transcendence of these ways of referring to things. This is how when you do the exercise that I'd say, 1 hour a day, 1 hour a day you begin. No pronouns. Thinking without any pronouns, without any me, my, I, you, he, she, they, us, we. None of those words. It. None of those words. Try thinking without using any of those words for 1 hour a day. This is one of the most challenging in the beginning. You think doing yoga is challenging, it's twisting your body up or holding some position. You try holding the concentration of the mind, training the mind to release words. This is what is essential as an exercise.
How do you do that when you're going to school and you have to write papers?
1 hour a day. 1 hour a day. And then you can build on that. When you're in your meditation, you're there with these thoughts. And how are the thoughts? Even the witnessing of the witness you were describing is referencing it, me. You see? These are referencing. They're learning how to pull that stuff out. Pull that out of your language. Train yourself to pull it out of your brain activity. And then it begins to speak to the different, deeper layers. Does this make sense? Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
So far, my understanding was that the soul, which contains my essence, the soul which is reincarnating, reincarnates in an embodiment, makes a life cycle, and however the destiny is, makes a new one, or in what stage ever you are. So if I am to, now I have to use the term, if this one am to forget the concept of I am as the body, which is clear to me in the first place. So the identifying with this body as being mine, or this is my I am, this Freud ego thing. If now it is to do that, plus you are releasing your soul and become a literally empty vessel where how to express where is there something like my soul, like this crashes for a moment my understanding, because I release my soul to source, so my soul goes to source. Does that mean, with other words, that in this life cycle I decide to do these steps, afterwards I will not reincarnate anymore?
Are you coming back in here, young lady?
I'm not sure if I expressed myself.
I understand the question, so I'm going to answer, but I don't want her to come in the middle of the answer.
Were you done with explaining refragmentation?
It'll relate. It'll connect. You!
The fist exercise that Nolan told me was really helpful. And like imagine a fist, then remove the arm, and remove the observer, then keep on stripping it. That's all you're left with.
That's part of the process, what's called quantum psychology. Hello? Is she going to the kitchen or the bathroom?
Bathroom, I
Oh, okay. Well, I don't want to embarrass her while she's behind the door.
think. Yeah, I often think of that Nolan taught me.
Do you want this to keep rolling?
Yeah.
You want to stop it or chop it up or anything? Well, you can edit it, right? Yes, because you're an editorializer. Okay. So you want to ask the question again now that we have Missy here?
Huh?
Hear your question.
Did you hear it?
No.
So my question was, in the understanding that you are not identifying yourself as being that body, so you get rid of the concept that you are the body. Now the understanding is to get rid, also not get rid, but you make a decision and saying, I release my soul to source. My question was, where the soul, does that mean that in this life cycle I decide to do so? I'm not doing it. I'm not reincarnating anymore. Or is, I didn't say that, but is my soul like being in source and after I've done this life cycle coming back in a new body? Or
Sitting on the shelf in Source's kitchen,
yeah,
in Source's workshop.
okay.
Isn't that what I was doing, Dad? When I was in India, and at some point you said I had to stop it.
I'll explain what is happening. Okay. This is one of the fundamental differences between Vedanta and Buddhism.
Okay.
Vedanta The Vedic teachings, Hinduism, Jainism, Sikhism, these all center, even Christianity, even Islam, even Judaism, these all center around the idea that there is a soul. And the soul inhabits a body. And it lives together until the body can no longer function. And then the soul separates, and then something happens to it. And this is where the religions differ. Okay? In some case, it's going to be judged and it's going to go to hell, or hang around in purgatory or limbo, or maybe it's going to go up to heaven.
Or an old castle in England.
Yeah, something like that. Okay?
Or into another body.
Well, the Western doesn't give you much about other bodies. The Western says it's gonna something like this is gonna happen to you.
Well, reincarnation?
But that's not a Western concept.
Oh, I thought you were talking about just.
Well, so now the Eastern, the way they take all of this is still the same, mind you, okay? And then the Eastern generally will say this thing is gonna come back into another body. It's going to reincarnate, again, into carne, meat, flesh. It will go back into flesh. That's what reincarnation means. You see?
It's like him.
You didn't know that?
No, of course not.
It's a different language
You just put
process.
it together. You see? This is why I reference the form. I reference the term, not only reincarnate, but reinformate. Because not everything goes into fleshy biological existence. It may go into another type of organic substance. It may go and become a tree. It may become a mountain. It may become water. This is why in many of the indigenous spiritual traditions, this is why we would speak of the spirit of the mountain, the spirit of the forest, or the spirit of the water. You see? We will say sometimes we will have legends and myths and we talk about someone who lived a very saintly life. And when she died, she became the forest, or she became the stream or something like this, right? So this is reinformating as opposed to reincarnating. This is reinformating. Okay? So it's a broader term. Nonetheless,
Is there still intelligence in that?
yes.
The
Yes.
reinforming?
There's a different construct for the cognitive awareness. If there's greater other kinds of awareness.
Because all those experiences and memories there.
This may be present. Sometimes they can be tapped. There are many, many, many experiences of people talking to a tree, and a tree tells you a whole big old story. I speak to the photons tell me the story. I talk to trees told me, they explained to me their how they function. You know, I just go out in the backyard and talk to the trees. Okay, that's the next thing. Go out there and sit there and talk to the tree, and all of a sudden, whoa. So that's how they do it. That's consciousness. You see? Are you willing to not be you, stuck in the notion of what is you? Because the more you are stuck in the notion of what is you, the more you are trapped by the laws that govern you. The laws of reality that tell you what is real and what is not real. See, the more you have to be you, the notion of what is you, your culture, your tradition, your philosophy, your religion, and all of that stuff, and then your science. The more that you identify with all of that, the more you are a prisoner of all of that. Therefore, how much you can access what is not in that sphere is very limited. So this dissolving also is to release you from those attachments of that reality. And so so when we look at this notion of the soul, this is why it's hard. The questions that you have is, but my soul, oh my God, my soul. But isn't my soul supposed to be immortal and eternal? And it's going to reincarnate in some kind of way. Or if it's not going to reincarnate, is that because it's eternally trapped in hell? Or is it eternally rewarded and blessed in heaven? Or, if I don't use those terms, is it so enlightened that it reached nirvana? And now it's staying in nirvana forever. This kind of thing. Okay? This is the nirvana as it is applied in the Hindu world. This is not nirvana of Buddhism. It's somewhat different. Why? Because the Buddhic constructs, particularly Tibetan Buddhism, they understand they understand issues of reincarnation. But the Buddha does not give in the teachings the notion of a single soul that just keeps going in and going in and going in for however many hundreds or thousands or millions of times to be incarnated or informated, because it's supposed to be learning, generating karma and learning the lessons along the way, and hopefully it retains such a level of awakeness, enlightenment, that is no longer, it completes the karmic cycles of existence, and it no longer needs to reincarnate because it's learned all the lessons. Since it's learned all the lessons, all that's left for it is nirvana. This is a certain notion, okay? Only the difference is what makes a soul. The Vedic and the other systems think the soul is a single thing. And in Buddhism, it is not a single thing. It is what are called aggregates. It is cosmic influences that come together. It's like saying prime colors. Blue and yellow are prime colors. You mix blue and yellow, you get green, right? Green's not a prime color. But if every time I saw green, I'd say green is a prime color, that's like saying that's a soul. You see? And it's always going to be green. But Buddhism would say there is blue, there is yellow. When they come together, you have green. And you have shades of blue and shades of yellow. These are aggregates. So they are cosmic aggregates, cosmic influences. And these are streams which are coming out from the lords of creation, from the divine fields where the creator beings are giving forth these waves into the field. And these waves come together, and these waves interact with each other. And then eventually they begin to experience resonance. You see? And resonance makes standing waves, and standing waves elaborate now time and space. You see? Time and space, and then the time and space, because the waves are also emanating in multiple directions, create containment. That containment is a containment of consciousness. And now you have a consciousness envelope. That field of consciousness, because it's sustaining a resonant field. This is a consciousness envelope. And this consciousness envelope is carrying forth the directive from the creator level that from which it flowed to continue to elaborate, to continue to emanate vibrations, and thus to create. So at each time there is an establishment of a consciousness envelope, a sentience field, a field of awareness. It continues the journey of creation. It's creating more. And then from that, it creates more, and that creates more and more and more. So when there is enough of that density, these essences, which are being elaborated, come together. There is a level of what you may call the soulic aggregate pools, meaning the things that make up souls, you know? These different aggregates came from different vibrational sources at creator level within the field above this. And they all come together and they're like ingredients in a pot of stew. Okay, and then they combine in various ways. And when they combine, they come down, they cluster, and that cluster becomes the causal, in the causal field, that cluster begins to create a sense of an identity that then comes into the mental body, and then the emotional body, and then into a physical body. Because it's a cluster, but once it gets to the physical body level, it's lost its cosmic consciousness. So it sees itself as a one. This is just me. It's like saying, I'm me. I have 2 hands, 2 feet, and all this other stuff, but there's only one of me. Do you see? The soul is not a single strand of intelligence. It's like a rope that is braided. Multiple strands that are braided.
So let's for a moment have the picture of soul Mike. Okay, give soul name. So it's in this beliefs, yeah, I understand. But this is a new construct, a new cluster.
So this is how you manage the concept. Okay. When you are willing to let go of the I, then you must let go of the mind, Okay? Right? So when you let go of the I, you let go of my soul.
Mm-hmm.
Shit, my soul. What will happen with my soul? You just see. So by the time you are at the stage of realization to release the soul, this is not some noble gesture for you because you're such a worthwhile person. This is dissolving. It is like if you take the block of sugar and you place it in the water, and it's holding, and it's holding, and it's holding, and then it crumbles in the water, yeah? You don't then go back and say, what happened to my sugar cube?
I do. Christiana does.
Christiana does. Okay. So what happens at this level of realization is that where there is the decision, if there is the decision to release the soul, it is coming about because one is already transcending the I. What is this state called? This state is called the Anatta state. This is the Anatta of the Anatta Bindu. The Anatta state means without soul, without self. Okay? The Buddha was not worried about what's going to happen to my soul when I become the Buddha. It was no longer the soul issue, you see.
The mind has been far released by then.
So, with other words, the general concept of saying you are an infinite being, you are an infinite being, your soul, we don't die, your soul cannot die, is a wrong concept.
Well, these are these are reassuring concepts for people who are at certain stages in realization.
But it's so widely spread that, especially in New Age spirituality, and I mean, it's everybody has the idea that you're an infinite being of like your soul, and whether your body dies or not doesn't really matter to the soul because you come back anyway. Or
Right.
yeah,
So this is why Hinduism is so popular. If you look at the population of Buddhism
mm-hmm.
on this planet compared to that of Hindus,
Mm-hmm.
and then if you take Hindus and you just annex all the Western religions,
Mm-hmm.
because they still want to cling to the soul,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Buddhism population is very small. Well, part of it has to do with communist China that didn't allow for the further spread of Buddhism and suppressed it. But still, the total people on the planet who believe in something called a soul that is intact.
It's about 7 billion.
Okay, yes,
That
I have
number.
a question.
yes,
What about Angie who said I was her child in the past life?
yes. So how does that work? Let us say there's the pot of soul.
Sorry, what did you say?
Yanjing was this Tibetan woman that worked for many years with my father.
Yeah.
And when I met her for the first time, she started to break down and cry because she said that I was her child from a past life.
Okay.
Even before she met her, just heard her name. She saw immediately into the Akashic field.
Mm-hmm.
And then when she saw her, she was like, when is she coming? When is she coming? She'll be here this afternoon. 4 times she called me in the morning. When is she coming? She gets there and we go in to meditate and she's starting to, she knows. You have this realm here where you have, you may call them proto-soulic aggregates in the spirit realm, spirit essences. And this is an aggregate from which certain souls will emerge. Think of it as like a bowl of spaghetti, okay? When you have the spaghetti and it's dry, it's all nice sticks, right? And they're all straight, they're all lined up in parallel. But when you put them in the pot and they start to soften up, they get all mixed up, right? Okay, so now consider this. Take the spaghetti sticks and chop them up so that each one is only like about 1 inch. Okay? And you put them in the pot. And then they soften up. And then you reach in there with a big spoon, a ladle, and you pull out some chopped up spaghetti. That big spoon worth of spaghetti might have little pieces coming from 5 different sticks, or maybe 25 different sticks, or maybe 50 different sticks, you see? But they're all coming from the same pot. So that ladle is one soul now, that combination. You take another ladle, you put it over here, and that's another soul. Combination, soul aggregate. But by the time it goes into the body, it doesn't say, I'm an aggregate of 50 different soul strands. It just says, I'm me. You got it? You see? It just says, I'm me. It's like when somebody asks you, what's your heritage? You say, oh, I am Irish and I am Bulgarian and I have some Italian in me and some American Indian, and Slavic in me and all this. Oh, wow. But what's your name? My name is Fred. Okay? Fred doesn't walk around thinking about the Italian and the Irish and all of this other kind of stuff. Fred is Fred. Now, most likely Fred didn't grow up in all of those different cultures. Fred may have grown up as a white American in Kansas. who just has his ancestry is from all of those European places, you see. But, so the soul identity is just the fusion with the body and the culture and the way it is raised. That's its consciousness. That's its CCE1, you see? How it identifies itself. Then when either it's going to die, the physical body dies and the soul will separate. And if the conditions of death are not so terrible, fast, intensely emotional, then there can be a full separating. If there is a sudden death with a lot of powerful emotions, like being in the World Trade Center when the World Trade Center is collapsing, or an explosion on a boat sinking with the Titanic, or terrorists coming in and shooting up the place, and there's all this fear, or you are a soldier and you're in battle and you're charging and bombs are landing all over and things are exploding and you're full of fear and you're full of hatred and you're full of patriotism and you're full of anger and all of these different intense emotions, and then suddenly an explosion here and there goes your body. Your soul is still running. Your consciousness is still running because it is not, that emotional energy and all that psychic energy is so much that it can trap the soul. So now it's stuck. Now here's your comrade running next to you. And you look at your comrade, you see your comrade, you stay with your comrade. You may not have even realized yet that you don't have a body. Because your consciousness is still the consciousness through here. And in all of this, so you're going to stick with your comrade. Your comrade has just seen you get destroyed, get obliterated. Your comrade is having the same emotions, now has even more emotions.
What's the camera?
Coming up.
Friend.
Oh, the friend. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Your fellow soldier.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay. Now your fellow soldier, who has love for you, that emotional energy is so intense, his consciousness is so intense, he what draws you to him. Without realizing, your soul is just now stuck to his body, his soulic body. You become an attachment to him. He continues on in the battle. And he survives. And then he goes back home and he has PTSD. And one of the reasons he has PTSD is because your consciousness of the soul is invading his body. Your consciousness is part of his field. Let's say you were addicted to cocaine. And he was a choir boy who never touched anything. And now he suddenly has a yearning for cocaine. Because your consciousness of your soul is influencing his field. So in 1996, I was trained in how to cleanse those things. But this is understanding what is happening. So if you, on the other hand, you have cancer, you have heart disease or something of this sort, you have diabetes, you have blood pressure, whatever, and you're getting old, and you realize that you're going to be dying sometime soon, and then you get sicker, and you go into the hospital and you have pneumonia, and you have a stroke, and all this kind of thing, and your family's coming there to you, and they're crying, and they see you, and you get to say your goodbyes. Thank you, love you, it's going to be okay. And then what happens? Your ancestors start to come. Your family member, your ancestors, and maybe some other angelic guides. And you are laying there in the bed, and your eyes open up like this. You're gone. Your soul has left your body. Now the soul will begin the process of disaggregating. So the rope starts to unwind. It will unravel. And some of those strands will stick around. Some of those strands will reincarnate. Some of those strands may go into the hell. Some of those strands may go into some heavenly realm. Some of those strands may ascend. What determines? Every one of those soul strands, or these aggregates, has its own karma. It has its own collective process of growth and awakening and evolution of consciousness. When they are together in this aggregate form, it creates a net consciousness.
So, okay, so this is a deeper, I mean, this is a deeper understanding when we say we are all one, right? Because we're all one out
We're
of
all
that.
from the same pasta box.
Yeah, exactly.
Pasta box.
That's-
Next time if we eat
yeah,
pasta,
we're
we
all-
think
we're all
of,
from the same box.
You thought her good.
Yeah, that's
this gives a lot of answers for the work what I've been doing years ago. That when somebody passed away, that I see parts that dissolve or are gone, but some parts of the pasta remains. I was working with these parts, but I could not explain what it was. And now I understand.
Is it also like when you meet people in this life and you have this intimate, I mean, let's talk about twin ray and twin soul and these kind of things, where they say, I know you, and you have this intimate relation. Is it because it's probably you from her or she from you or whatever has this part of strengths which one's
Same pasta box.
Well, consider this, okay? I dip into the pot.
Yeah.
And I come up with, let's say there's strands from 20 different sticks,
Mhm.
okay? And I dip into the pot again. Now this pot also has strands, maybe from 15 different sticks, or maybe 50 different sticks. But they may have 10 sticks in common.
Mhm.
You may have 5 sticks in common, whatever, okay? If they have more sticks in common, then what that means is that when they become souls in bodies, there will be a stronger bond between them. There will be a stronger connection and understanding that something about us, our lives are similar. This may be my soulmate, one of my soulmates, or this is my twin flame, or this kind of thing. It has to do with the alignment of the aggregates. Not a single soul who was just chopped off like one stick and forever eternity is going around looking for the other one that looks just like it. That's not. It's the combinations. And this is why when a person may have the experience of many lifetimes of a connection with someone, there is some core soulic continuity, some core soulic identity. Why is that so important? Because where there is the discovery of that, then it becomes really, really, really much more clear what is the nature of the karma connected with them. And so the karma of realization in each is also the karma of realization between them. And that relationship becomes something that guides the choices in this life. They guide the choices in this life to say, it is not enough to just know that you are here. There is something that we must do together. We must live together. We must awaken together. Now that doesn't mean you marry the person or you're with them all your life. It means you come to the realization of what the connection is. And in the course of that, the relationship centers on realization, not necessarily punishment. or anything like that. It is realization. And the greater the realization, the greater the potential in the field for drawing awareness of two things. One is the awareness of other incarnations, other lives, where these have shared common strands, okay? And therefore the opportunity for addressing the realization across the multiple lives that they have shared together, these aggregate bands, okay? The second is the realization as to what are the other soul groupings that relate with these different incarnations and these beings, and thus the realization that if through this connection with one another, they are assisting in their own awakening, they are also assisting in the awakenings across time and space and dimensions of their other incarnated forms and the networks of other beings with whom they are sharing a pot of this pasta. So a fully awakened, fully realized being is not just realized in this body in this lifetime. The full realization process is the connecting with other soul relatives, so to speak, soul aggregate relatives. And this is why the relationship between a Dakini and a Daka is so important, where there is that realizing that it is not about getting together and sharing romance and sexual pleasures because this is your ultimate twin flame and you romanticize about all this. No, the realization that this is a Dakini Daka relationship is the realization that both are to be brought to full awakening and to bring up the cluster soul aggregates that they have shared in common, and by extension, the others who are of these soul groups that in this body, in this life, in this family, I am part of a soul grouping. In this other life, in this body, that family, you are part of some other soul grouping as well. And some of those we overlap. But the part is, if I'm doing my part, this is another reason why the sacred geometry of the pyramid is so powerful when you consider the scattering. You are bringing them all up to this process. See?
I really don't want to interrupt, but I so hardly need to go to the toilet.
How
Sorry.
do you enjoy?
I'll be back in half a minute.
Food? Food? Order food? Yeah, order food.
Rico like some food?
Why not? Why not? If you know what food it is you have to order food. Rico will, of course, pay for the food.
Is that that?
Go on. You know where to look. What is that, DoorDash? Do you use DoorDash app? They deliver to your house. They have all kinds of restaurants in the area. You can download that app.
There's Uber Eats also.
Or Uber Eats, something like that.
Do you have Uber Eats?
I think I have DoorDash on. Anyway, is this helpful?
Everything inside is like collapsing and but it's so wow. Because the next question that came up was karma. Where it's related to in this pasta pot. So it was also good idea to. Huh? That's the sauce.
What's happening in your taste buds? So,
You were saying the pyramid.
yes. So you see what is happening. You have these soulic incarnations that are spread out all over. Okay? And the twin flames come together, or the soul family connections come together. And there may be some elevation to an experience of a CCE2. For example, there are a lot of indigenous traditions where there have been, where when people come together who are strangers of one another, their first reaction is not to fight. Their first reaction is to explore. To explore, what is my relationship to you? Who are you and where do you come from? What is your ancestry? What is my ancestry? Once they explore that, then they decide whether they are friend or foe. Okay? You are enemy or you are my friend. Okay? There are others who, as soon as there's something they just simply don't recognize, their reaction is defensive or offensive. So if you could imagine living where interacting with anyone or anything is really an inquiry to understand who they are, and what their makeup is and their origins is, what they are. Okay? And with the intention that the more that they can understand, the more they can heal. The more they can heal. The more they can realize, and thus the more that they can awaken. With permission. Okay? So, I find you in the wilderness. Who are you? This is why the oral tradition of genealogy has been so important in many cultures around the world. Where people were told to memorize, they may memorize 100 generations of their family tree. You don't know, or 50 or 20 or whatever. My name is blah, 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 and I come from my father and my mother were this, and their father and their mother, and they come from this. And then in the time when the white sailboats came, the big ships came and took us away, and we went over there. And then this one was born, and this one was born. Before them, he was the father and the mother and all this. And they have this oral tradition of all of that, because when they sit and they talk to one another, they may find where they have the same. You are my cousin from 8 generations ago. We are connected. Now, if we have to call on our ancestors, together we can call on the same ancestors. If one of us gets sick, we fall down the mountain, broken up and injured in the snow, and then we're getting sick, and I have to carry you. Now I may call upon the spirits of the ancestors, and the spirits of the ancestors are more likely to work more for both of us in our survival, because as ancestors they are connected. Make sense? Pretty cool. So this is why when you come to understand, when someone has an awareness that they have been with you many lifetimes in a very close kind of way, it's not one soul and one soul always connecting. It's the strands that overlap. Okay? If they are also declared to be on the path of awakening, and if they are declared to release, surrender the human free will, and submit to cosmic divine will, then they will say something like, it is God's plan. It is God's plan for us to come together and to realize God's plan. And they become committed together. And then the law of reciprocity further activates in their deeper consciousness what is the roadmap to get all the way up here. And when there is deviation from that path, the other one steps in and says, no, you're not going that way. It may look like you're going up here, but you're really going way over here into inflated ego. And they are being guided. They may disrupt this process. This one may be dealing with certain kinds of habits in the body-mind. And let's say it's sexual energy. They haven't learned how to master that yet. And so this one, their interactions will be in such a way as to support this person coming to understand how to get it really learn what is needed to be learned to master their sexual energy. It may not look like it's a lesson. It may look like it is torture. You see? I give you an example. What is it you guys are ordering?
Hi.
Just make sure, remember I'm the sissy over here. I like it mild. So if they can put the spices on the side. Tonka tofu. So this husband and wife, good friends of mine. The husband was a classmate of mine at university. He was always very spiritual. He was black belt in Kung Fu, and he meditated. He was transcendental meditation. Okay. And I thought he was so cool. And then later he goes to law school, and then he goes to join Maharishi. And in Fairfield, Iowa, he went to live there in that community of the Maharishi International University. And he meets, his name is John, and John meets Alice. And together, they marry. They are married by the Maharishi. So this is like a wonderful marriage, right? And they are two soulmates. They are both spiritually advanced. And they come together. And then after about a year into the marriage, Alice doesn't want to have sex anymore. And she says, that is not why I love you. I love you for the being that you are, but I want to be a nun. I want to be focused on the teachings of our Guru, Maharishi. And therefore I don't want to become attached in that kind of way with you. You are my husband, but I don't want that relationship. I don't want that kind of sexual relationship. And John is like, one, she's a hot babe. So, and in the beginning, they have wonderful sexual relations, you see. Now they're married, and he's thinking, like most men would think, I've got my perfect sex partner, my perfect love partner, my perfect spiritual partner. See? And then she says, love, yes. Spirit, yes. Sex, no. And so this is difficult for him. He's trying to understand why. Is it something about me? She goes, no, it's not about you. Are you not attracted to me? She goes, yes, of course I'm attracted to you. Well, what have I done wrong? Did I say something wrong? hurt you in some kind of way? No, no, no. Why are you rejecting me? She goes, I'm not rejecting you. I am choosing this path, the path of purity, the Purusha path. But I happen to be married, so I cannot be a nun. But I still want that kind of connection as my partner. I want you to support me. That's what she's asking. And he's got to go through this, and he's a young man in his 20s, late 20s, 30s. He's got all this sexual potency and everything else, and he's got to suppress it. He doesn't want to go out and have affairs with other women because her path is a spiritual path. And both of them are devotees of the Guru. So what does he do? He toughens it out. And every once in a while when the Guru is in town and he goes and he speaks with Maharishi, and then after some time, they meet another Guru. Maharishi is no longer the one for them, and they join who was a protege of Maharishi, a disciple of Maharishi who had become enlightened. This is Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, who now is younger, and Maharishi is old and all of that. And they become connected with Ravi Shankar, not the musician Ravi Shankar, Nora Jones's father, but Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, the enlightened master from India. Okay, but he understands the same thing. Alice wants her devotion to him, not to her husband.
Would you like anything from my place?
Vegetables, shrimps, not spicy.
Steamed vegetables or?
Doesn't matter. And rice if possible is also okay.
Big bowl of rice. Rice, and more rice.
Steamed vegetables?
I got 2 minutes.
I prefer brown. How are you?
I don't.
Actually, you got steamed rice the last time. Steamed white rice, I think.
Yeah, but this was just because I couldn't do that. It was so hot that I needed some. Usually I don't eat rice at all. Can you write there something, or do you have to take it like it is? Could you say like steamed? I saw you found steamed vegetables, right? Could you say no peppers? Or is it not possible
Yeah,
to do that
you
comment?
can, do you want me to keep brown rice on the side? Because we have that curry, but it comes with rice.
Curry,
We got curry.
spicy curry.
I got the one kind of curry and I asked for it not to be spicy, and then also the soup and I asked not to be spicy.
Do you want me to get another rice?
I think so. He'll put that in the soup for sure.
No peppers?
Yes, please. On the steamed veggies, no peppers.
No peppers. Now you said no peppers and he said yes. Did you interpret that to mean yes peppers or yes no peppers?
Yes, no peppers.
Good.
Thank you very much. And is there any kind of, let me see, no, I don't need protein anymore. I'm good with that because I'm going to have I'll make some spaghetti we're talking about. No, it will just be some lentil noodles.
Okay.
So I'm good with just the veggies.
So the couple met the other guy, and then
So they become disciples of a new guru who himself was a disciple of the Maharishi. So it's like, he's the heir apparent, so to speak, to that lineage. And so they become followers of him, And because he's younger and he's more accessible than the Maharishi, they have more frequent gatherings, where he's talking like that. And so John is asking, like, what am I supposed to do? Alice just wants to love you, just wants to follow you. And it's not sexual, but that's just pure devotional love. But she doesn't want, and this is part of your question from the other night when we were filming. Okay, what about the sexual energy and the path to enlightenment? And so there are a number of traditions where most of them that actually are focused on the process of enlightenment and attaining a spiritual purity will have at least periods where celibacy is necessary. Okay, energetically, how it supports things. The answer that you got at that time, which were the ones from up here, were less concerned with that level of explanation and more concerned with KDI-UCL as a higher issue. Because again, you can get into all kinds of practices. You can have discipline and you can have rigidity and regularity, and you can do your practice the way you're supposed to do the practice. But if your consciousness is only of a certain orientation, then the practice is only going to be worth but so much. So the highest consciousness in an embodied state is KDI-UCL. You see? So then all of the practices must be in KDI-UCL. And if they are in KDI-UCL, then what the action is going to be determined by that consciousness of KDI-UCL, as opposed to the action by itself determining the consciousness. This is why the answer that you were given was of that orientation and not just what I'm explaining now. Like, yes, Master George King gave the transmission and they said, you should not engage, men should not ejaculate except for the time of procreating. It is the only time when a man and woman need to come together in sexual union, and it is for the purpose of conception, fertilization, and that's it. If you look at a lion does not screw unless the lioness is in heat. Then he goes crazy. Right?
Propagation of speech.
That's right. So it's very basic animalistic instinct. And if you watch a lion has a staying power of about 15 seconds. That's it.
Womp womp.
Womp womp. In and out. Okay. Now he'll recover a little bit. And then he's ready to go again if he's still, the pheromones are still in the air, or if there's another lioness that's ready. But if the lioness is not ready, he's not horny otherwise. So there's this practice that there should be that kind of saving of the energy, because it's not just a body fluid, it is the energy. It is the actual kundalini is involved in the process and residing within the prostate gland and residing within the sexual organs as well, and as it moves up. So the more you keep ejaculating, the more you keep orgasming, particularly the male ejaculating. The woman orgasming can bring kundalini up, but it has to be done in the proper way. And that's where the sexual tantra practices, the real tantra practices, work on moving that energy. But it is not about pleasure. It is not about pleasure. It's about the energy of the kundalini itself, how to move it. Pleasure is only one small part of it, and actually, when you do it properly, in certain of the Buddhic practices, it is not pleasurable at all. It's torture. But it is to dislodge where the blockages are. So, nonetheless, they have this relationship. John is asking Guruji, what must I do? Should I go and be with another woman because I love my wife and she loves me, but she doesn't want to have sex, but I do. So should I go and have, what they call a side squeeze? Did I have an affair with somebody on the side and then she understands that she's not giving it to me? Then I go get it someplace else, but that's just sex and that's just the energy release, and I come back and my love and devotion is still to my family and my wife. And he says, no. No, because what would you have learned? You would not have learned anything. You would not have evolved. She is pushing your evolution as well as her own. The question is, are you supporting her evolution also to push her evolution? Or are you only in your selfishness? So it's like, oh, okay. So this goes on for several years, multiple years. And then finally, Guruji says, okay, now it is time. It's okay for the two of you to separate and divorce. And for you, John, go have a new partner, have a sexual relationship, have a marriage, make babies, if this is what you want. It's okay. Because by that time, if he was still so frustrated about it, then he had learned what he needed to learn. And either he was not going to continue to evolve in that context, or he was going to still be able to evolve, but outside of that context. And if he was going to continue to evolve outside of that context, then it would mean he would have to have a different kind of dakini. Maybe a Kama Sutra type dakini. You see? Who then would understand how to take this awakening master, who herself was a mastress, and through the tantric practices, the two of them could achieve the next stages of realization. Whereas Alice had taken the ascetic route as a renunciate, and she would continue to develop along this path. So they were together for that period of time in those stages to support one another. See? These are how these relationship dynamics support or interfere. So if you are to try to understand with clarity where you are along the way, just think of KDIUCL. When am I feeling sorry for myself? When am I thinking, screw this person? I'm so mad at this person. This person is terrible for me in my life. It's all their fault. And I'm suffering. Where's KDIUCL? So these exercises, final comment on that question. The exercises of centering in KDIUCL, emanating KDIUCL as much as we can experience in the presence of another. And from there, you are continuously checking in for permission. Checking in for permission. Which means you may be sitting at a table having a conversation with someone. And you are emitting your being KDIUCL. The witness may also understand that your light is just too bright at that time. If you understand what is going on, this is where the you comes in, the unconditional. This is where the C comes in, the compassionate. I am completely open. This person is not used to someone who is completely open. They don't know how to understand that. There's certain feeling about that that is so amazingly, wow, and it's disorienting. And because of their woundedness, suddenly that is replaced by feeling vulnerable. And if it is feeling vulnerable, then they'll feel insecure and they will want to shut down. Maybe they will want to run away. Or maybe their behavior changes to aggressive behavior because it's like you got inside of their space. And this is how they are reacting. They feel violated by your unconditional love. So then in this case, the compassionate element, and this is why it's so important. What came through me was the KDIUL. And it was shortly thereafter when Chrysalia added the C. Shortly afterwards. I said, of course. Of course. And so the compassionate part, particularly if it comes in the face of non-entitlement. Because imagine this, I think I'm being unconditionally loving. And you do not react to me towards the way that I would want you to react. And if you're not reacting to me that way and I begin to pull back, how unconditional was that? I shut down. I'm not going to love you if you're not going to love me back. Well, there's nothing unconditional about that. However, what if I am in KDIUCL and you are not reacting to me in a way that I understand means that you are comfortable? And so now I have to pull back. I don't shut it off. I just pull it back in a little bit. Why? Because that's the compassion speaking. I do not intend to violate your sovereignty. However, if you feel that I am, then in compassion I will withdraw some. See? I will contract some. This is, sometimes people don't learn these kinds of boundaries. How to stay open altogether, yet how bright is your light? You can turn down the power a little bit, turn down the wattage. So I'm open, and yet I am not emanating so intensely. You know, I'm just being gentle, and being with permission. Remember, this is again why I said permission and the KDIUCL have to be together. This is what you will understand permission.
Guys, do you know when did they give an estimate time?
We're starting over because we were trying a restaurant that doesn't do. So an hour from now.
Oh, okay. No, because I'll prepare something along with it, so I need 10 minutes for that. So
No, you're good.
an hour from now. Is that how long you have to wait here? Wow.
We haven't even ordered yet.
No. Generally speaking, but
It says anywhere from 35 to 70 minutes.
70. Whoa.
Desire and an intent. There is a critical expansion experience where the eversion begins. That is a drive for disintegration. Okay? There is an intention of realization, not I am realizing, not what is happening to me. The language is just simply realization, 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 realization. Just realization. And that pulls apart the self-construct. And from there comes the anatta, the emergence of the anatta state. the non-self. One is the non-soul, the other is the non-self. Both are the aspects of the anatta. So,
I'm on food stamps. I'm a government shelter.
I hope we saw the people who were food stamps.
that's right. They ain't getting them. They're running out.
So that's side note official now that the USA Inc. is bankrupt, right? And they,
Well, it's been bankrupt for
You have
years.
the card.
$22 trillion in debt.
So we can order soda.
In those jeans over there.
$22
Or in the
billion.
little coat
Oh,
on the chair here, lady. There is, if you took up all the economies on the planet, you would see that there is over $100 trillion in debt on the planet.
yeah.
So you go, if there's $100 trillion in debt, who's it owed to?
Exactly.
Okay.
No, but it's a game who keeps the whole thing running.
Because
Obviously.
debt, yes, that's because they discovered debt financing to turn debt into an asset.
Absolutely. But what is the game behind closing the government down? And then what are they negotiating now to reopen?
Well, Trump wants a wall.
He wants something that's a monument to his ego.
Something that will stand for decades. If they built it, he would want them to name it after him too.
Can you imagine that the government is closed because of bankruptcy? The US government.
Oh, is that true?
You didn't know that?
Of course. I never watched
Ah,
TV or I
I
never.
don't know all these things. No, I don't have even a TV and I don't listen to radio, but I still know all these things.
Really, you don't know.
It's true he refuses to sign the authorization bill. But the deeper truth is that the money's not there anyway. That's essentially the definition of bankruptcy. When your bills are way more than your assets, right?
Mhm.
So America is bankrupt. Is that what you told? And now?
Well, this is one of the big reasons that Brexit is such an important issue. When the UK leaves the EU, that leaves Germany as the strongest economy to try to support and keep the rest of the EU afloat. You see, because what is the UK? The UK is not the economy of Great Britain. The UK is the residence of the City of London. And the banking of the City of London is one of the major centers on the planet. The District of Columbia, Washington, D.C., different from the rest of the United States, the Vatican, the City of London, and Tel Aviv.
Oh, Tel Aviv too, I didn't know.
Tel Aviv, which is the center of the Rothschilds banking empire, the real center of control. So these are the four power centers on the planet. This is why Putin is creating. He's been creating as a fifth power center, the concentration of wealth and power, but especially the concentration of the wealth. The military might is to defend the concentrations of the wealth. This is why they say Putin himself has $200 billion of his personal fortune. That's a drop in the bucket. That's a tiny drop in the bucket compared to what the Rothschilds own. They have trillions and trillions of dollars. So, yeah, you can say, oh, Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos are these are the richest men in the world and this kind of thing. But these guys are just part of a control mechanism that there are the shiny handles, on the oak back to the central, and that central is primarily Rothschilds and the global banking enterprise.
Unbelievable.
How much?
I was 79.
79?
Yeah.
Tell me how
So
much.
does that include the tip? Do we have to have cash for the tip?
Let's see.
I think they said up to
Yeah, it's included too.
Okay.
I don't feel like I would finished up in about coming or not coming up.
Without coming what?
Refragmenting.
Oh, the refragmentation process. All right. Refragmentation.
It feels like a glitch coming back, like for a moment there's no perspective, or it's slippery and non-directional. And then for a moment there's a question mark, like, how can I do this?
Well,
And the answer that came through was allowance.
because you see, you will come to understand, you will begin. This is part of the nature of the Bindu awakening. Bradley Terminal. When you are a good monk in a monastery, a good disciple in an ashram, you will do what you are told. You will think as you are told to think. So when things occur, you will respond the way you're told to respond. And you may bypass certain experiences.
And the path of the Bindu is different.
Somewhat in this way. The path of the Bindu is intended to give the experience of omnidirectional perception, which means to be able to be aware from all perspectives.
And that's different than the sentinel.
Different than what?
Sentinel.
A sentinel is an informant state of a cosmic being. The sentinel, as a cosmic being, intelligence, is a formation of a field of intelligence which is supporting the overall integrity of the field. It is the presence of the awareness itself that creates or sustains the matrix of the field. This is a sentinel being. It was told that the Bindu had never incorporated on this planet until now, in this form, this body. So generally, people are speaking about an incorporation or a incarnation of some other being, a cosmic being. You know, the Buddha of this or the saint of that, or something that comes back into form. To incorporate as Bindu is a cosmic essence rather than what we might identify as a cosmic being. The essence incorporates in a shell, in a vessel, or body. It has an identity assigned to it, and it has a construct of a soulic nature. And then it evolves in the awakening process to release all that which is non-essential, meaning not of essence. You see? Physical body is not of essence. Soul is not of essence. Identity as a person is not of essence. Bindu is essence. You see? KDIUCL is essence. So Bindu and KDIUCL naturally go together as comparable states of existence. See? The center that defines and elaborates perspective and dimensionality. In the higher stages of the Buddhic awakening, they talk about the 10 directions of space. Now, in the chant of Metta, the blessing that we played yesterday, she spoke of the 8 directions. She said, in the eastern direction, in the western direction, in the northern direction, in the southern direction, in the southeast direction, in the northwest direction, the northeast direction, and the southwest direction, in the direction below, in the direction above. That's the 10. You see? Now there are other directions. There's the direction within and the direction without. There's also the direction around. But in essence, when we consider the evolution of the cosmology, the Bindu, without the Bindu, these directions would not hold integrity. You see?
Yeah, you need a reference point.
There's the reference point. That is what it is. It is the reference point. It's not the being. See that? So the reference point, when one is attaining this expansion state and there is becoming this awareness from all directions. In order for the disaggregation to proceed, the intent is simply realization in all as all. Realization in all as all. And therefore there's non-attachment to a given path at that point. There's non-attachment to a given structure. There's simply realization. And the more that this is attained, then there comes to be an ascension to the state of the attainment of cosmic consciousness. Cosmic consciousness is different from divine consciousness. Divine consciousness is different from love consciousness. These are stages that people will go through to achieve cosmic consciousness and this true oneness. That is an ascended consciousness state, which is disembodied and is the allness. It's not the me, I'm floating here in this cosmos. It is the cosmos. The awareness as cosmos.
Mm.
You see? And so the disaggregation as it moves to completion in terms of the aggregation component of it just turns the pure essence of sentience, of awareness. Now from there, stabilization in that state is involving the assignments that are necessary for the fulfillment of the continuation of the process of the universe or the cosmos realizing itself. In other words, it's no longer about you and your journey of self-realization. You have returned to the soup. Okay? You're the water that's gone back into the ocean. The ocean has to realize itself as ocean. Okay? For all of those other drops of water to realize they are of ocean. And so what is necessary? This essence of these aggregates and these cosmic ingredients that have come back into union and oneness in the field of pure potential. The lords of creation and the lords of karma, celestial lords, will use this again and recycle it in some sort of way. Aspects of it. There may be the understanding that Source re-expresses and re-enters into this realm or another realm. This is where you'll see talks about, for example, the Buddha and the teachings in the Diamond Sutra. He will talk about things like, you guys better get serious about your lessons. He's talking to the Arhats, which are the early enlightened monks. He says, get real, get serious, get committed about your enlightenment. I'm not going to be here forever. He says, I got to go sometime soon. You know, I'm going to become an old man, get tired in this body. And everything is impermanent. Just because I become the Buddha doesn't mean I live forever in this body. No, you can't leave us. You can't leave us. Get your shit together. Study and practice so you can become Buddhas. You know? And then he gets to the stage and then he's 81 years old or so and he gets food poisoning or something and he knows it's his time and he lets go and he goes up into nirvana or extinction. There's two different things. He goes into nirvana, he can come back easy. Okay, they can get that understanding. You're in and out of nirvana, you make an appearance here and there, that kind of thing. But what happens with this extinction business? Extinction business means you dissolve even the Buddha essence itself in terms of identification. Now you just become aspect of field, aspect of source. But guess what? Source, through the lords of creation and the Lord of existence, has intent for all existence, all creation to become realized. And thus the path of realization is the path which is then informated and embodied in that which is called Buddhic. So from the Buddhic field may reemerge into a form, it may re-informate, and thus you have the Buddha who shows up again. Says, here I am. They said, I thought you were gone for good. I did go for good. And then I was re-essenced. You see? This gets beyond the linearity of the human brain, of course. This is why I'm saying this is a big difference between reading these spiritual books and texts and actually experiencing it.
Mm-hmm.
When you experience this, then you know.